Welcome to the 2-Month Review, a weekly podcast brought to you by Open Letter and 3%, in which we take one long book, break it down section by section, talk about it, analyze it, joke about it, have fun with it. I'm Chad Post from Open Letter Books, and joined as always by Brian Wood, author of Joytime Killbox.
Hi, Chad. Thanks for having me on.
And a finalist for the best author of Rochester.
Oh, my goodness.
Who won?
Amazing. A lady that self-published a collection of stories that you can't order because...
The one that, seriously, yeah, explain this.
I don't know,
you're going to love this.
Well, I wanted to like support and order the book and stuff, you know, like, oh, cool, another local author, that'd be awesome. So I tried to order it, and Amazon, it's only available on Amazon, and Amazon wouldn't send it to me because I guess there's been too many complaints about it's not formatted right. Like it's just like a bunch of hot garbage when you get it. So they refuse to ship. Amazon refuses to ship anything because of the formatting or whatever. I don't know. I guess it's self-published and it's not. I don't know what. Maybe it wasn't a PDF and the margins are messed up. I have no idea.
Damn, no quality. Well done, Rochester. You're best author of Rochester. Can't buy the book.
I lost.
Can't figure out how that works. You lost to someone who can't publish an ebook correctly.
I know. It happens. It's all right.
That sucks.
I'm just happy.
That voting.
Just happy to be here.
So yeah. Keep it going. And we're joined this week by Rhett McNeil, who is living in Tulsa, translator of several interesting books and from Spanish and Portuguese. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
And you're in Tulsa.
The baseball game last night.
Oh, you're a Houston fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm from Houston. Bummed about that, but I think the Stros have got this. They'll avenge your Cardinals.
Yeah, I think for sure. I think Houston's fine, but I was glad that they lost last night after all the stuff with the harassing the woman and the women journalists. Yeah, that was such a bad thing that I was like, oh, I'm okay with them losing this game because
like the Astros got to celebrate for about 3 minutes after the walk-off before someone fucked it all up.
And then you have some stupid dude turning around and basically defending the ability to sign dudes who commit horrible domestic violence crimes. I mean, it fits in with this book. This sounds like it's just baseball talk, but it's not. It fits in with this book, and that for anyone who doesn't know, Roberto Osuna, I forget what his first name is, was a pitcher for Toronto. He abused his wife. I don't remember all the details of it, but it was very clear and it was very bad. And he was supposed to go to jail in Canada, but they had signed some peace accord, or I don't remember what it's called. But it's so that a lot of things, a lot of details can't come out. But he has to go through years of therapy and all sorts of stuff to deal with his true horrible nature. And the Astros traded for him because he was suspended for basically half the season, if not almost the full season. So his value was very low. And so they took advantage of that. And then sort of were like, well, we're a no tolerance. We don't put up with this kind of stuff, except if you're really this good. And then after they beat the Yankees, their assistant general manager turned to three women and started yelling at them in the locker room, just unprovoked, just totally drunk, started yelling, "I'm so glad we signed Ozuna. I'm so fucking glad we signed Ozuna," and said it 6 times in the presence of many journalists, several who were wearing domestic violence, anti-domestic violence gear. Yeah. It's the worst thing that you could, intimidating a reporter's bad, but intimidating a female reporter with a domestic violence case is real bad.
Yeah. And one of whom would often, especially when the Astros first signed Ozuna and he would play, when he would come into the game, she would often tweet out a hotline for domestic violence survivors or people going through that stuff, if this is triggering for you, etc. And it seemed specifically directed at her, which is just ugly and nasty. And it's good Lord, executiors, what can you do?
White people, white dudes, man. So this season, if I haven't said it so far, we're reading Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann, 1,000-page book set in Ohio, filled with stories of violence and male violence and just the general problems in America. And so I thought today would be fun if we started with something. So there's one line on 241 for the section. We're reading up to 270 or 297 for today, but on 241 there's a line about Ohio, and it says the fact that the Ohio State Fair has piglet racing, and it reminded me of two things. One is that when I grew up in Bay City, Michigan, which is basically, you know, Ohio plus, or I guess, I don't know. It's a small little town in the Midwest in Michigan. It's crap.
Ohio with a little LL Bean.
Yeah, Ohio with a little LL Bean. Ohio with a little bit more logging. So in Bay City, we used to have the pig gig every year, and they'd have these commercials. So it'd be a big festival where they'd roast pigs and have like old bands that didn't really need to be around anymore touring. So it was like our version of a state fair, but local. And they have like these commercials where they'd sing for the pig gig and be like, give me that, big pig gig, Yahoo Fest 2004. And they would have pig racing, but also pig parachuting. Like they drop piglets out of airplanes with parachutes on them to land in the middle of the pig gig and then fucking roast them and eat them.
Oh my God.
So I thought about this last night, and I thought, you know what? We should play my favorite game of reading a headline and determining whether or not the headline is from Florida or from Ohio. So I looked up a few of these. Okay, so I'm going to try and do this without giving anything away. Okay, a man claims his wife was kidnapped by holograms.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Florida or Ohio?
That feels really, really like bathtub drugs kind of thing. I'm going to go Ohio on that one.
Right?
Although, man, Florida, boy, they just sit in the sun and just bake, right?
And do bath salts.
Florida due to like
bath salts are free. Yeah. That one is Florida.
I'll say Florida.
Oh, I knew it.
Okay. Florida. So, okay, here's a good one.
Epcot Center related technologies.
Yeah.
Good call.
So this is a bit long, but it's not just a headline, but it's worth it. A 39-year-old man was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct after he decided to go streaking through his neighborhood on a random weeknight. No harm, right? Well, it turns out that Sean Welsh wasn't able to make it back to his house to complete his birthday suit voyage because he was eventually discovered hiding in his neighbor's dryer. Florida or Ohio?
Oh, that's Maumee, Ohio. Just outside of Toledo. Yeah, totally. Yep. Ohio.
God.
It is Ohio. It is Ohio. Linwood, Ohio. Okay. Woman arrested for drunk driving asked the law enforcement officer if drunk driving is against the law.
Oh, God. Quick side note. I had a friend one time that he pulled over to follow. He realized he was drunk, so he pulled over and slept in his car, which is still a DUI, right? Because you're in your car. So he's woken up to the police officer knocking on his window. And so he rolls the window down and starts ordering an In-N-Out burger. He ordered, so he's on audio and they played it in court of, how do you have proof that he's drunk? He's like, I'd like a cheeseburger and fries, please. It's just like, sir, I'm the police. I'm here to arrest you. Can I get a milkshake too? I'll go Ohio. They really like drinking in Ohio.
Yep, that one's Ohio. Let me give you one more. God, there's so many good ones. Let me give you one more. Oh wait. Okay, two more. Okay.
All right.
First one. A man remained in jail Sunday after he was accused of attacking 3 women with a 4-foot sword and a peanut butter sandwich. He used the sword to threaten 2 women, one of them who was pregnant, and then smeared another with peanut butter sandwich before deputies hauled him away.
What the hell? Rhett, I'll let you drive on this one.
Yeah.
In which state would someone attack someone with a peanut butter sandwich?
Yeah, this is the bizarre juxtaposition of sword and peanut butter sandwich attack. I'm gonna go Florida, the weirder state.
Florida it is. It is.
Yeah, I'm with Rhett on that one.
Last
peanut
one.
Butter and ninja swords.
Blank gun range allows customers to shoot at each other.
What?
So this segues into the book so well. Which state would have?
Where you shoot at each other?
Yeah, I can't get any more details beyond just this headline. So, because the website's busted, but that's the headline.
That's got to be Florida.
That one is Florida.
Yeah.
That one is Florida. The best thing that I found when I was searching for this though was this article that ran in the letters to the editor section of the Findlay, Ohio Courier, in which someone wrote in complaining that the Ohio buckeye has flowers with both male and female organs on the same tree. And so this person goes on, I couldn't believe it. So I did some research, and sure enough, the science website states that the Ohio buckeye is polymonoecious, bearing both bisexual and male flowers. The buckeye is our state tree, and most of us gladly wear the nickname Buckeyes, but it is shameful and unacceptable that a bisexual tree should represent us. We are flaunting the Holy Bible. I urge everyone to contact the state representative to demand legislation removing the buckeye as our state tree and condemning the use of the term Buckeye as a nickname for residents of Ohio. Does anyone know if carnations are bisexual? It's literally the last line. And then also tying into this book was this headline that came up from today, in which a man hitchhiked from Ohio to Florida to stalk his ex-girlfriend. So that seems like right in keeping with everything.
Yeah.
So anyways, going on from that fun, Rhett, what have you been thinking about the book so far?
First of all, I love it, and it's so fun to read. And one of the first, and kind of quick for a 1,000-page book, I feel like, or it feels like it goes. I'm a very slow reader generally, and it feels kind of fast for me. But one of the early thoughts was like, oh shit, this is there's just it wasn't so much about this stream of consciousness narration, which I don't think it quite is, but more about this idea of lists.
Oh yeah,
and it made me think of other authors that are kind of obsessed with lists, like Harry Matthews or Nabokov, some of the Borges stories. And I was like, hell yeah, 1,000-page list. I'm absolutely here for that.
That's interesting. Yeah,
I don't know. I love lists, and to like reduce to make the entire book a giant list of like America, past and present, and flora and fauna and vocabulary words and misspelled vocabulary words, and wondering about those misspellings or wrong definitions. I don't know. It's a book that is absolutely madly in love with words,
Yeah.
Maybe even less so like the poetic turn of phrase or sentence, but just words themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I have two things that relate to that. One, the list that I marked from this section that was my favorite is on 266, where it says the fact that there have been 1.5 million gun deaths in America since 1968. The fact that the main ways to pass away in America, apart from being shot, are heart attack, pancreatic cancer, car accident, fire, alcohol, drowning in a lake, river, ocean, or swimming pool, gas poisoning, falling off a ladder, a building, or some other structure, plane crash, heat exhaustion, bike crash, getting caught in agricultural machinery, accidental hanging or strangulation, electrocution, storms, electrical storms, being crushed by objects or crushed between objects. The fact that being crushed between objects sounds like my life. Pressing goes on. That was one of my favorite lists from here. Is just a list of all the ways that people tend to die. Which is good fun. But what you're saying about the words and being in love with words, one of the two of you should go to page 283. Brian, you should read this. Go to page 283. About 3/4 of the way down, there's a line that on the left that begins 3. It's like World War III. Start right there with the fact that Ben.
Sure. The fact that Ben just looked up for me, and sea urchins are not crustaceans or mollusks. They're a whole another kind of thing related to sand dollars. Nothing to do with sea anemones either. Anemones. The fact that I just can't pronounce that word. The fact that I always get it wrong. The fact, like kids do with cinnamon. The fact that anemone is a word you try to avoid ever having to say out loud because you're sure to flub it up. The fact that when I was a kid I couldn't pronounce a single thing right, and I still can't really, especially when I'm nervous. The fact that I can remember having trouble with stuff like railroad and Sweet William and fragrance, shenanigan, pandemonium, tongue twisters. The fact that no speech therapy helped. The fact that they just gave me more tongue twisters to practice. The fact that sea urchins come in all colors. The fact that maybe they're kind of cross between a plant and an animal, but nobody ever says so. The fact that some man somewhere or other started growing bark right out his legs and arms. And maybe animal and vegetable animals can coexist more than we think. Vegetal. The fact that I hate when music sounds like my kitchen timer. Yeah, I can keep going, but yeah.
No, but that whole play with like what you're saying about the words and the love of words, the anemone part, and like the ability of the pronouncing and the way that she's playing around with all that stuff is so fun.
Yeah, and that comes into play a few times here with the like the WH
Right.
over pronunciation of things like what, where, and the way I love the way that she makes you kind of say it, and when you read it out loud, you really have. Again, like going back to Nabokov, that when he does the low li ta, and he makes your tongue make that acrobatic movement to say it the way he wants you to say it. Like there's moments here where you're just so in this narrator's head. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And this, we sometimes try and summarize this, and although this book has like not really a plot, we did leave off last episode talking about how there had been suddenly a plot where she goes out into the world and gets stuck, where her car breaks down, her tire goes flat, and is stuck at the side of the road, freezing. And then after that short interlude with the cougar point of view, that's like basically a page, and it's just like the cougar hunting with another lion and then getting sick of him. We're back to her voice, and she's been rescued by Jesus, or as she says, Jesus saved me. Jesus saved me, and since Jesus came and saved her. But I had a question for you guys about that. So, not the idea of talking about the plot of this book is ridiculous in a lot of ways, except that for this one moment that I was very confused. So it's marked here somewhere. So I was taking this as like that was all happening on that particular morning, right? Everything that's been happening in the book has been in the same time period, right?
Yeah. She's making the cinnamon rolls, and then the kids get up. Et cetera, et cetera.
Right. So then on page 280, it says, okay, so where do I want to start? Okay, so Brian, I was saying that like everything, my assumption is that everything's been taking place the same morning, right? That the same morning that the book set in, she drives out to deliver her pies, the car breaks down, and then she gets rescued by Jesus/Jesus. But getting your tire fixed by a guy called Jesus is just not something a person can keep bottled up for long. Bozo the Clown, Tiffany Trump, the fact that for a few days after, I couldn't remember what day it was, the fact that I kept having to check, the fact that I was sort of disoriented, the fact that maybe a bit of my brain froze, chill brain, the fact that it's supposed to be good for your brain, the fact that if you have a brain injury, they chill your whole head to stop the swelling. That thing of like, the fact for a few days after, I couldn't remember what day it was, that threw me. And so I guess I just have a question for you. Is that supposed to be in relation to her being saved, that now we are, that event didn't take place in the morning that we've been reading?
I don't think so. I don't know what the time is, to be honest with you. I'm just kind of lost and adrift in it. So I haven't worried about that at all. Just sometimes you get kind of, for me, I get like hypnotized by the rhythm and the flow, and kind of just like, again, like going along the ride on a stream, and then it's like, oh, we're in a car stranded now. That's weird, because there was no, there's not that typical realism of, I took the pies out to the car, I got into the car, I turned the ignition, I drove out it's just, you're on the road all of a sudden, and then you're saved all of a sudden. It's just happens. So yeah, I haven't been able to really keep track of time or when the time is at all.
I just didn't even think.
I don't care either, though. It's weird.
Yeah, I didn't either. I just didn't think it. I just assumed like everything was going, going with it, and then I hit that and was like, maybe that story of her on the side of the road was actually just a memory from some point in the past, which sort of like complicated everything in a way for going forward, or what's happening in her mind. I mean, wasn't really paying attention to the timing at all either, except that she gets out of it here and then draws attention to it with that weird statement.
Yeah.
You got any hot takes, Rhett? No,
it just, the fact that it was odd, because there's no, like, in terms of plot, there is no jumping around, like, the following week this happened.
Yeah.
And then I woke up the next day. It all does seem to be happening in this one day. But this one point where it kind of jumps ahead, and when she says for a few days after, instead of, narrating the present day, what happened a few days after is that she couldn't remember what day it was. This, in other words, like this, what seems to be this one day is kind of like a day of days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A moment of moments, like all the thoughts, all of contemporary culture,
That sort of relates to what Brian and I were talking about after you taught your class the other day, or last week, and we're talking about the book and how long it is and how much stuff is in here. And I was trying to make the comparison that, like, in the way that Ulysses was in the intent to put all of Dublin into that book, all that day and all of Dublin into that book, that this seems to be an attempt to do a similar thing, but all of her days in one person's consciousness, in one woman's consciousness, rather than it's like the yin to the yang of Ulysses and this book, where Ulysses is doing all the different forms, all the different types of characters, all the different space of Dublin is all being brought to life in this one particular book. And the city is like a character and can be mapped and all that kind of stuff. And this is like that, but the opposite side. No formal tricks, like no different sections. Everything's still like in this one kind of runaway train. But it's all of her thoughts and all of her days blending together like that, with the time maybe shifting and whatever, but all of that happening within her is kind of a similar, it's like Ulysses, but the exact opposite.
Yeah. I like the Ulysses comparison, because it is sort of this, like you said, all of Dublin in a single book or a single day. This is like all of contemporary fretting or something like that.
Yeah.
In a single day. But what struck me most about this, and in this way it's unlike Ulysses, is that the focus is completely taken away from the sentence, to the extent that this is not a single sentence. Obviously there are the sections about the lioness or the cougar that have like actual punctuation and standard sentence structure, but there's like a refusal to write a sentence in the parts in the fact that parts, and a focus instead on like usually nouns, but a lot of individual words and listing of words. And those can be clever and have their own structures too. The part you read, Chad, where she's listing the ways to die that move from electrocution, storms, electrical storms. Yeah. Those sort of, they're sort of ordered in a poetic or lovely sort of fashion. The way, Brian, like you said about Lolita, the way where when Lolita's classmates are listed, like it's first and last names, but it's just like lovely. It has like a ring to it. There's sort of a poetic ordering of things, which I think is what we get here. And there's just like no value placed on the sentence. It's sort of taken away from it and towards these fragments or vocabulary words, or words that sort of sound the same, or that where one sort of triggers another, where you'll get something like, blizzard, buzzard, gizzard, wizard, and then Toto or Kansas, something like that.
Yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't thought of it in that way, but you're right. It is like disavowing the sentence in favor of something else, something poetic and something that flows, instead of something that's crafted in that sentence structure way.
Oh, and I just can't. Oh, go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry.
I just said I just can't get over how like delicious this sounds to the ear when you read it out loud. It's insane. To like do this high wire act for this long and to sustain it is just unbelievable. Like it's such a feat. I can't believe this didn't win the Booker. What the hell?
Did you guys? We talked about this.
I didn't read the other book, so I can't have an opinion on it. But I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm doing some workshop with other writers right now, and you're trying to fix the sentences to sound right or flow right, and you look at this thing and you're like, how the hell is she doing this for so long, so well? Like, this is unbelievable. It's like that dude that just ran the marathon in 2 hours. Like, I can't do that for 5 minutes, and this guy's like sustaining this for so long. Yeah. This is impossible. This is like an unhuman feat, and here it is. It's being done.
His unofficial world record.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, all that reminds me of the other kind of crackpot thing that I came up with when I was reading this section, or thinking about kind of the book as a whole, is that one of the episodes, Brian, you mentioned that there's really just two plots, like a stranger comes to town or someone goes off into the leaves town.
Sure.
And we talked about that with Huckleberry Finn too. And I thought maybe there's also a different way of framing that same thing, that sort of the Joyce versus Pynchon kind of thing, where in a lot of Joyce's stuff, even in Ulysses, but especially in Finnegan's Wake, is all about cyclical recycling. It's like things that are cyclical that come back, this kind of eternal like revolutions of human time, of personal experience, of myth. All of that is very much like continues and continues. And then you got the Pynchon side of things where like things are entropic and like any system will break down. And like the physics of that are obviously like one of the main laws of thermodynamics, but like the idea that within relations and within the human brain or within a society, it will tend towards chaos and towards like a flattening. And this book in some ways seems to be those two things. So like, there's a cyclicalness of like, this is just her morning. These are just her days of her life. At the same time that there's this feeling of like, is this all going to fall apart? So when you mentioned the High Wire Act and her doing this, like her car breaking down, it seemed to me sort of almost metaphorical for like, we're going to leave this one space of the kitchen and then like everything falls into this chaos or into this entropic moment. And then maybe this book is sort of is like asking that question in some sense of like, can this mind continue to do this day after day? Or is it going to like, by being in your head in the solipsistic world, is that going to lead to like a breakdown? And like some of the things that are in here are like of whatever would be like a chaotic entropic moment. Like some of the things in here that she mentions are like reminded me of that too, in the sense that she's like, I can't remember anything. Like, I forget where this line is, but there's something about like, I don't remember things at all. Yeah. It's on 276. The fact that I have the worst memory of anyone I know, the fact that most of my life is wasted on me, the fact that as the historian of my own life, I'm just going on hunches most of the time, running on empty, stumbling over sand dunes, hunted to the point of distinction. And she goes off into one of her other things. But there's something about that just struck me as like, there's kind of that's like maybe part of a weird sort of subplot or a structure to the book that isn't immediately apparent. That's my crackpot theory for the day.
No, I think that's an interesting theory. No, I mean, I throw out a stranger comes to town or somebody goes out on an adventure. I throw that out just for like to have some sort of framework to talk about stories with, newer readers or newer writers. I don't know if I halfway believe it or not, but it's an easy way to talk about. It's just like an easy way to get a discussion going when you're staring at a bunch of blank faces.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it is one of those things. I've heard that before too, and like it's one of those like master plot sort of ideas that
there's only one story, and it's a love story. Everything is
everything's about love and death.
Yeah,
absolutely. Brett, did you spend much time in Bloomington Normal at all when you were working with Delkey?
A few weekends. I mean, we were in Champaign-Urbana at that point, but a few weekends, I suppose. Were you there when John was doing the letters to the editor section for the Review of Contemporary Fiction? Yes.
Okay, so these, for anyone who doesn't know, the letters to the editor for the Review of Contemporary Fiction is a journal covering like contemporary writers, and there would be book reviews on the back, and then sometimes Dear Editor letters that were completely invented, that John would invent as like people who are writing in to ask advice on stuff, and they would be sad characters or just like strange people with strange questions that had no appropriate reason to be sent to a publisher, but they were like some of them are pretty funny. And one of the running gags was the spelling of Leroy. In Leroy, Illinois has like, and this is true, I see it in Leroy, New York, and it did the same thing. I think it's a problem with the name Leroy, where they spell it differently, like in every single instance. And on page 291, I immediately thought of this because it had it says something about Leroy, Leroy, and then it's spelled in 3 different ways. And like there was, and one of the gags in the letters to the editor was related to this, because there were signs outside of Leroy would be LE space ROY, and then be all one word with like lowercase on the next sign to their town. Their town had no consistency. It was wonderful. But I wondered if you had encountered that when you're down there. It's one of those things that once you see it, you can't ever unthink it. It's always gonna be a mess. Right.
That's
Anyway.
that's a pretty part too, because like, I mean, some of the, like when she's kind of making these jumps from one word to the next, like a slightly different spelling or an odd pronunciation of it, or a secondary meaning of it. Sometimes the connections, like there's a jump that I can't make intellectually. Like I don't understand the connection between the two. But this is a good example of it. Like if you were showing, for me, like if you wanted to show a reader, like, look how clever this is. Like she's back talking about Little House on the Prairie, and then says, in fact, that doesn't explain why they named his brother Royal, right? So you get this first name Royal from that book. The fact that she never goes into that, but maybe it's a form of Leroy, which seems odd, although Le Roi in French is the king, right? And so Leroy, different spelling, Le Roi, daddy's legs in the headlights, right? So to this move from like a character in Little House on the Prairie, these different spellings of a name, which also mean from like royal and royalty to the king, another king, the king to daddy, is kind of like there's this elegant sort of move between those things. And then all of a sudden, she's talking about her parents again and out of discussion of Little House on the Prairie or how to spell Leroy.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so great. That was a question that I thought, I mean, you obviously translate from languages into English, but reading this book, since we focus so much on translations and on international literature, and the podcast is the first time that this book isn't in translation. So the translation of it as not a topic for any of the episodes, but it occurred to me that this seems like this would be a great challenge to translate into other languages. And I wondered if you had any perspective on that as a professional translator, like the quirks, that sort of wordplay, like things that would make this either fun or super challenge. And is there a good phrase for the fact that has the same sort of like tickishness in Spanish or Portuguese?
Wow. Shit. I actually have a lot to say on that, I think, because it's hard for me to read any book in English or any other language and not think about what it might be like to translate it. Just because I spend so much time with books doing that exact thing, like most of my day in and out. And yes, this book would be, to say it would be impossible doesn't mean you couldn't do it, I guess, in this case. Right. And there are a bunch of levels on which it would prove utterly challenging, to the point where it would really free you up as a translator to play around with stuff. And I guess one of the first things I noticed is that, given the fact that this book is in English, and that much of the like movies and books and many of the songs, television shows, everything that's sort of brought up in it, because it's about the United States of America, which kind of has a hegemonic, maybe for the last like 50, 60 years, the post-war period, hold on world culture in terms of film, and even like 7-Up and Heinz ketchup, et cetera, like a lot of that you could leave in a way that if you, Chad, were publishing a book from India, let's say, and all the movies and movie stars reference were from Bollywood films, and not only that, there were sort of games played with their names, and then associations made with like supermarket products that no one in the States would ever have heard of, or very few people would have. So going out of English at this moment in time with a book like this that talks so much about, or at least references so much of like not only popular culture, but just like daily mundanity that actually kind of has spread out to the rest of the world. It would be easier to do that from English into other languages than I think from any other language into English at this moment.
That's interesting, and that I totally agree with that. That makes a lot of sense because of the just with that layer to it of the references. We are doing a book from India, and we do have some of those issues coming up. Actually, not exactly in relation to movies or products, but in terms of like references to political groups and to like different terminologies and different slang words that we don't know what they're referencing.
Just and second volume of Footnotes.
See, yeah, I know. It's and the book. The writer is Sublimal Mistra, and he wrote, his big influence was like Burroughs. So it's like all this kind of cut up experimental jamming together of things. So that makes it like a third level of like, oh boy, you know, I don't know what this is, and I don't know what this is as a book. So it's great. It's really fun. It's a selling point. All those are supposed to be selling points. But yeah, I was thinking like, so that makes sense as how you could do it. The ticks and the wordplay would be fun because I think the translator would be able to have fun with that. But I haven't looked to see if this has been translated or is being translated into any other languages.
It would, yeah, I think it would take a while. It would take, and it would really take a good editor to decide, you know, what in the target language would be recognized by, like, let's say an average reader of works in translation, and what would have to be substituted by something that would, say, be on a supermarket shelf there, right, or a movie star. But the other part of the part where that gets problematic, like changing those, because it wouldn't really make a big difference if you change 7-Up for another, like a Brazilian soda or something like that. Mm-hmm. It really wouldn't make that big of a difference. But often, the next thing will be related to that.
Yeah.
So it's called 7-Up. And then she'll say like 7 brides for 7 brothers or something like that.
Right.
And so like those relationships would be messed up. And especially when she uses like alliteration or consonants to get from like a blizzard through that to like a buzzard and a wizard, and from the wizard to like Toto and the Wizard of Oz or something. Given the fact that alliteration and consonants, much like rhyme and poetry, won't exist in the target language in those same words, and especially not in that same order, that is then impossible to replicate just using the same words. What it does for the translator is you're utterly free. You can play those games yourself in your own language, right?
Right. It brings up.
There's no way to do it.
It reminds me of like the conversations we have where if this were a book from India, say, we'll go with that, like from a particular region in India that's like the equivalent of Ohio, and it was like one person, their life in this one space with the problems that are surrounding that thing, and it's incredibly like domestic and like internal monologues. I bet you the first thing someone would say is like, that won't travel. Like they would be like, that won't travel to the US. It's too specific. It's too regional. It's too wedded to that culture. It's not universal enough. Like that comes up a lot when you talk to various agents and whomever. They'll be like, well, it's just too French, or right, it won't travel. And that's the same claim could be levied against this book in reverse, but I don't think we'd ever think of that because of the American influence out over the world in terms of our culture and everything else. Maybe it's not even an issue, but it does feel incredibly universal. And I wonder if like that sort of viewpoint that we have of if something is too specifically wedded to its region and that those things being not universal, being too specific, is just like a flawed part of our American thinking to begin with. And that a lot of these books like this is much grander than like just being Ohio. You don't have to know Ohio to get this. You don't even need to know that much about like contemporary America to get this. Like there's so much more there. And I don't know. It just occurred to me as a question. I don't really have any like real grand thoughts on that. I'll just leave it there and no one can reply.
Well, no, I mean, like, it seems like the UK is having a very similar experience with it that American readers are having, where it feels like it's very true to how crazy our times are right now and the angst that it's going to cause, someone trying to raise kids in this world.
That's one of my favorite bits in this section too, where she's like, I have to remind myself how many kids I have, and then the number is 4. I just think of it being a lot.
I think like a dangerous world pressing in on you, and you're trying to protect your young and figure out your way in the world that travels everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Should.
Yeah. I think a similar case could be made like, oh, this is so much about like, I don't know, being a woman, being a mother, having children, etc., that it's like, you know, not a broad enough picture of, I don't know, the same thing of like, it won't travel. Basically, it won't travel out of like women's experienceness to the broader public. But that's absolutely not true. And I don't have children. And so, and this is like maybe one of the best books I've ever read about like the inner life of someone with children. I mean, it was, you know, despite, you know, lacking, or maybe because it sort of lacks obvious plot points or frequent ones. You know, you get one every 50 pages or so, something occurs. But because it's just her sort of thinking through these relationships and connecting so many things to the way she interacts with her children or thinks about her children, it's just like a lovely book on parenthood, which is, you know, an experience that is not my own, like culturally, and especially motherhood is, you know, a thing that's impossible for me to experience firsthand, but it, you know, that travels, I guess, as you were kind of saying.
Yeah, that seems like you're setting me up for one of my mom bits, but I'm not going to go there this week. I love moms.
Chad loves moms.
We got this. I did have a thought about moms the other day when I was like stretching. I was like, man, dudes never stretch, but the yoga movement especially among moms seems to make a lot of sense. Cause I'm like, man, the life is stressful. Like everything is just a constant barrage. And like, I feel like men just like carry it, like in like your body is tense and like, you know, relax. Right. And like yoga is supposed to counter that. Like moms figured that out. Moms figured out yoga. That's good. Stretching. They figured out stretching.
Nah, man, you just need a kegerator and go fire off some rounds at the range. You'll be fine.
That's true. give me some Coors Light and a 44. Let's go fuck some shit up.
Yeah, there you go. Namaste.
Gonna go to Florida where you can shoot at each other on the range because, you know, why not? Oh man. I don't know, what other sections did you guys have from this that stood out to you? Or that
I was interested in the very beginning when we get the first the lioness mating, or the memory of the lioness mating. It's interesting. I felt like the narrator has been super restrained with not being vulgar the entire throughout all of her thoughts. She's like always trying to like, oh, I shouldn't be so negative, take the high road. And then in this part, when she finally gives in to the other mountain lion, there's this great line where she's at her urging, he clung to her until she was all fuck.
Yep.
Right, which is I've never heard it used like that. That was awesome. I underlined that. That was really cool. But then just beneath that, they were entwined all day, not like coyotes. Coyotes fuck on the mountainside in great hurry. They fuck wherever it's like not but the repetition of fuck in here really stood out to me because it had been so like just the clean language of like no you know, you say Djibouti, you don't say a bad word or whatever. And then I like to hear where it's just kind of giving into like this primal raw language.
Yeah. As if there's like a contrast between the animalistic natural side of things and her kind of keeping control and not letting her mind say that. So she does say, I mean, she says anal sex twice in this section, and both times is like, don't think about that. Like that's no good. And I thought there's also like
But even that made me think, like when you read Maggie Nelson's The Argonauts, like on like page 1 or 2, it's like, and then I think she used the word, then he fucks me in my ass under a eucalyptus tree or something like that, right? Like even the way, like just you could say it any way you want, but again, she uses the narrator uses anal sex. You know, it keeps it in the cleanest language possible, as far as, you know, keeps it very PG. So I thought it was a really interesting juxtaposition of when that takes place, and then, you know, we get Chuck and her first love, and just the way it's described. I really like that kind of animalistic version, and then the way she's working through her memories and sexuality through her mind. That stood out to me. in this section.
In a way, isn't that like so the you mentioned that there's, and I've mentioned it too, that there's a lack of plot. There's no like forward, like she gets stuck in the snow, she's going to get saved. This may have happened not even on this current day. But there are little plot things in a sense, but they're all backwards. So like finding out about her first love, finding out about Frank, finding out about what happened with her mom dying, finding out about the attempted rape in Italy, finding out like how they went to and lived in England for a time and their studies. Like the plots are being sort of developed, but they're all retrospectively being developed. Like if you could take a woman's life as a subject of a book and tell her story chronologically and make it a plotted novel, and instead you're taking the story of a woman's life and making it what this moment is right now under these circumstances, and the rest and all the things that came to that moment are in her mind at all points in time, or in her mind at points in time throughout the course of these days. All that stuff kind of is still there, and shows like the importance of like the both dramatic events like her mom dying and losing her father too, and also like the non-important events like the stuff that she has about just like the bee in bread loaf, like things that are like little things that her memory latches onto. But it creates like you could restructure this, I guess, into like a conventional thing, and not doing that allows it to be much more powerful. Mm-hmm. That was all meaningless statement shit that I was saying, but you know what I meant, I think. Yeah, I ran out of steam there. I entropied. I was out there. I got out, and then it just like all fell apart.
That's like when you're driving on like a toll road, and you're like, yeah, I could probably wait one more exit to get gas. And then as soon as you pass it, it's like 26 miles, and the next exit you're like, oh fuck. Yeah. Let's ride this out. Let's go. I'll make it. I'm gonna make it. Where's my exit?
Exactly.
I should have gotten off right there. Damn it. I always do that.
I do it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm always testing. I don't know. The other thing that came to mind, like this book seems to have everything in it. Like everything exists in this book. This thing about the fact that squirrel has to be one of the weirdest words, where she's talking about spelling things and saying things and how the kids can't pronounce things right. I saw that, read that line, and was like, oh my God, I had this memory of being in kindergarten, and there's this girl that I had like a kindergarten crush on, and she made fun of me because I couldn't spell squirrel. Like I just couldn't figure out where if it was 2 R's, I couldn't do it. And so like she dismissed me. I couldn't, because I was a bad speller. I was not worthy of a kindergarten crush. Fucking squirrels. Fuck that word.
They're just rats with fluffy tails. They're not that cute.
If you shave their tail, they're not cute at all. Yep. I love the part too in here there's so much funny stuff. There's so much good stuff. I love the part where it's talking about how in every Amish movie they're always raising a barn.
I laughed at that. They got a lot of barns in the Amish country. I guess they need them. Yeah.
Oh man. Anyways, I don't know. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to touch upon or bring up from this section?
I'm good myself.
I did want to say that what struck me early on, I mean, this is for this section and throughout the book, is so you all know this book. I read it in high school, and it was like kind of meaningful to me, and then it later seemed like nonsensical and not very useful. The Elements of Style by Strunk and Wyatt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know that book? Okay, yeah. So in there, and this always sort of stuck with me. In there, there's a specific prohibition about using this construction, the fact that. It's specifically prohibited in there because it's seen as sort of like a
it's redundant. Of course, it's
redundant. You could just say
because you're writing powerful, energetic prose.
Exactly right. And so this seemed like just an over and over denunciation, and like I know about her that she sort of renounced teaching creative writing and creative writing programs generally, and thinks they're not very useful. But it seems like a specific renunciation of strong, straightforward, direct writing, not only in just this always churning mind of the narrator, and the refusal to write, proper sentences. But this use of the redundant, the fact that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed like a specific middle finger to certain style of writing in Strunk. The Strunk and White specifically, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like that. It's a good point.
Yeah. It's just it is a middle finger to all of that for sure. And I just flipped to one of my other favorite lines in here. The fact that I really need a professional declutterer, or at least a book on decluttering from the library, unless they've decluttered the library too and have no books anymore. Feels like very true, very true. So anyway, so it's fun. It's such a fun book to talk about and to read in this way, and it works really well. And her voice really is the strong part of it. So I'm grateful for this book to exist and loving it so far. I don't know. Is there anything else anyone wants to add? Otherwise, we can do our favorite lines and promote our stuff. No, go for it, Rhett. Your favorite line.
All right. This is actually just from the section before ours, but I'm using it anyway. I don't care.
Yeah.
She's talking about her shyness. This is 233.
Yep.
I'm about 60% of the way down the page. I mean, the fact that maybe I should be making poffertjes for all of our neighbors, be neighborly. The fact that if it weren't for my shyness, I'd probably be the biggest earth mother going. The fact that I'd take in strays, hold cocktail parties, dinner parties, picnics, cookouts, the whole deal, with hampers and check tablecloths and a portable barbecue and a whole load of fried chicken and potato salad, live band, Halloween parties, matchmaking, baby showers, bowel renewal parties, mass sleepovers, you name it. Nurse the sick, chauffeur everybody else's kids to school, run a stall at the farmer's market, sell eggs door to door, make pies and poffertjes for everybody in sight, no middlemen, talk suicides down from precipices, grab toddlers out of harm's way when they wander lost on busy roads. The fact that I'd happily just do just about anything for people, anything, even spend time with them if they just stop hurting my feelings.
Damn, yeah. That is great. That really does build and has the way that this book works is so wonderful, and that's a perfect example of it. Like that, the list that you're talking about, and it's also run and then emotionally charged. It's also what's that?
And I feel like this our narrator is like obviously like concerned with the contemporary world. I mean, like Trump is mentioned and global warming is mentioned, all of this, mass shootings, all of these contemporary ethical or moral or political problems are mentioned, but she's not a downer in a way. It's like a fascinating mind. And so even her thinking through those things is really beautiful to watch. And then you get these moments too. This part here is about her being shy and about being, timid around other people or getting hurt feelings. But that combined with this like effervescent desire to like do everything, to be the biggest earth mother going, throwing parties, talking suicides down from precipices. This book is like never a bummer. It never feels like, just pure fretting or contemporary pessimism. It's like, it's everything. I don't know.
Yeah.
Contains multitudes, as I said.
Yeah, that's true. I'm going to do my favorite line because it ties into yours is on 242. The fact that there are TED Talks on how great shyness is, but I forget why. The fact that I don't even know why there are TED Talks.
I think I'll recall there being something added to that, which is like, if you're really shy, how the hell could you be giving a TED Talk anyways?
Yeah.
So there's that.
What's your one, Brian?
I'll do mine on 246, and I'm thinking about reading this one, and I'm thinking about that idea of like a middle finger to those writing rules and Strunk and White, and this is how you and workshops. She's talking about having to have the ingredients list for selling her cinnamon rolls to people. The fact that sometimes I make nutty cinnamon buns for people who don't have problems with nuts, which is almost nobody. The fact that they drive me nuts with all their nut stuff. The fact that soon they'll want me to make a sugar and butter and flour-free version for people on a diet, and an air-free version for people allergic to air, and a beef liver-flavored version for pets. But at some point, you just have to say, these are the cinnamon rolls that I make. The fact that I told the kids, Jesus save me, but nobody's interested. I like that. These are the cinnamon rolls that I make. This is my big ass book. That's one sentence, and if you don't like it, you can go shut up. It's probably about time you shut up, anyways. Like, I like that one. I just felt it was so charged. Yeah.
So fun. So Rhett, what are you working on now?
I have just finished up. I have a book coming out in like 3 weeks. Another Tavares book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's actually 5 of his books. There's like 100-page books, kind of these aphoristic prose poetry on meditations on a given subject. The book's entitled "Reading is Walking," and it's coming out from Quantum Prose in like 2 weeks. It's at the printer, so
awesome.
Yeah,
that's spectacular. Reading is walking.
Reading is Walking. Yeah.
Okay. And who's the publisher?
Quantum Prose.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like this small outfit. I think they're out of Providence, but they do stuff at the intersection of like science and literature. And the first book in this series, and in our omnibus volume, is called "Brief Notes on Science."
Oh, very cool. I really like Tavares a lot. So.
Yeah, if you like Tavares, this is like, I don't know. It's still him, and I think he's better when he's almost writing poetry or just like really short, kind of aphoristic language. It's really good. I wrote a really weird introduction to the volume that I think I'm proud of. I'm not sure yet. I haven't read it.
Sold with confidence.
Yeah. I tried to ape his style a little bit, and which is fun because I'm writing in his voice all the time anyway.
Yeah.
So I've got that coming out soon. Looking at, I don't know. I've got like a dozen books on the back burner translation.
Oh, wow. A lot. How's Tulsa?
Oh man, I love it here. It's really great. The Sandlot baseball season is coming to an end. We have a game in Marfa the first weekend in November, so we'll be down in Texas.
That's awesome. And
the Artist Fellowship is really rad. I gave a reading last night, and there's a cool community here. Oh, when I was at I drove out to Norman, Oklahoma for the Newstat Prize announcement.
Oh, great.
Last week. I don't know if you saw Ismail Kadar's next year's recipient.
Yeah. That's
That's great.
Cool.
I love it.
Really cool.
Thanks for asking.
Brian, you have anything you want to promote?
The short story collection's out. It's called Joy Time Kill Box, and it's available wherever books are sold. If you're a good literary citizen, go to your local bookstore and ask them to order it, and that'd be a cool way to get it.
Yep, go for it. It's great. It's spectacular. Should have won Book of Rochester for this year.
Yeah, whatever.
We have, if anyone's listening and wants to help support Open Letter, we have our annual celebration / gala on November 10th. It's a Sunday night. It'll be here in Rochester. Tickets are either $25 where you get one Open Letter book and appetizers, or $100 where you get 5 books and appetizers. If you're not in Rochester, which most of you are not, you can always support it by buying a ticket and just making a note in the comments field that you'd like to give it to a student or someone else who could otherwise not attend, and we will give out those tickets to local students. Or you could just make a one-time donation through the website. But that's a great way to support Open Letter. It's our only fundraising event that we do publicly, like big fundraising event every year is this celebration. I mean, hopefully at some point I'll be emailing all of you who listen a billion times asking you to support various things. But for now, we really just do this. So buy a ticket, please. That's my pitch. Otherwise, you can always find us at open_letter or Open Letter Books on Instagram or all those places like that. And I'm always Chad W. Post on everything. So guess anyone have anything you want to add?
I think we're done.
I think that's
go Astros. I don't know.
Yeah, go
Astros. There we go. Thank you, Brian.
Go Astros with that caveat. Oh man.